What's going on, guys, and welcome back to DLC week. We got another deck that we're going to go over and break down. Again, let me know if you guys like this way of doing deck profiles. Updated spreadsheet is down below, linked. We have it updated again, separating the first 3 weeks of the format, and now we're putting September separately because formats change as the format develops. So this information was pulled from, I think it was 23 Ruby Amethyst lists in the last 2 weeks since September 1st. So again, not taking the entire format, but taking the last couple weeks. Again, 23 samples. And here we go. What are some cards that really highlight this strategy? It's a very consistent strategy with all kinds of removal. And we see the bounce package being the snake and the fox. They're both played at 4 in every single list. And then we also have Merlin Rabbit. The Merlin Rabbit paired with the bounce package to draw you into your power cards such as Maui and Be Prepared is just crazy value, and why this deck does so good and why it's going to continue to do so good for formats to come. We also have Friends on the other side as another consistency card, and Queen's Castle. It feels like castle control at times because the deck is so consistent and you have such powerful late game threats that once you start to lay these castles down, it becomes very difficult for your opponent to deal with them. So, moving on to our deck core. Again, this core here, like if you watched the last video, these are the minimum ratios played in every single list. If a card is not on here, it's because it was not played in a list. Brawl, played in, I think, all but one list. However, a lot of lists were playing Brawl at 2 and 3, so it's not a 4 of in this format. That's definitely very clear. But one list played it at 0, so Brawl does not make its way onto the core. 31 card core, meaning you have 29 spots to be creative. And you don't have to play these cards. This is just a cheat sheet. If you're looking to build Ruby Amethyst, put these 31 cards into your deck, fill in the blanks with your text. And guess what? We got that for you too in just a second. So if you're building this deck, you're going to have their bounce package being your snake and your fox, most likely at 4 for both of them. It's just tried, true, and proven for 3 format, or 2, 3, 4, for the 4th format in a row now, ever since release back in Rise of the Floodborn. Flynn Rider has found his way into our tech category, no longer in the control core category like he was last format. However, Sisu Emboldened Warrior is still in there. Kind of like Amethyst Emerald Tempo, Goat isn't seeing play as a 4 of in every single list. Most of them, sure, but not all of them. We see 3 Goats, 4 Rabbits, though this card is just absolutely crazy. 3 Mauis, 4 Friends on the other side. Again, Rabbit and Friends in Ruby Amethyst will always be 4 ofs until we're not allowed to play them. Lastly, Be Prepared and Queen's Castle each coming in as powerful 3 ofs. The fact that Library came out now kind of makes Castle not necessarily a mandatory 4 of, but it's still very strong. And we have so many late game threats. You have Elsa, you have Medusa, you have Tremaine, you have Be Prepared, you have Sisu. You have so many strong late game threats that some people opt to play 3 Be Prepareds. So, oh, wrong button. We did that last time too. 3rd time's the charm. We're going to do better with the next one. Let's go ahead and look at the text. These are cards that saw play in some of those tops. Ratios obviously fluctuating and bouncing around. Chernobog Followers is probably the most common 1-drop, but this is a deck that your 1-drop has a lot of flexibility. Whether you want consistency from Chernobog or Broom with the draw aspects, or you want something with 3 willpower like your Olaf or your Mini, and then you could even play Teeth and Ambition. However, the 3 lists playing those 2 cards did not run Teeth and Ambition. Personally, I don't think Teeth and Ambition is very good this format either. I'm not huge on Olaf or Mini without it. I think to play them, it should probably be a format where Teeth is really strong, kind of like last format where things like Diablo were super popular, where a lot of hyper aggro was starting to see a lot of play too. And in that type of format, I think that Teeth and those 3 willpower 1-drops is much better. Again, not huge on them this format, but some people did see success with it. Rafiki, a strong card with Challenger +3 status, and then also Cogsworth, who really isn't a turn 1 play. Typically, you'll see him played at 2 because he's more of a late game play where you pair him up with another card, you play your card, you play your Cogsworth, Cogsworth then gives the other card you played Rush, and you can challenge into something right away. In that 2-drop spot, again, we kind of briefly mentioned Frenemy falling from Grace. Lumiere also was always kind of just a tech card, giving everything that +1 was kind of nice. And then Pinocchio Talkative Puppet, being able to play it and exert one of your opponent's characters, and the fact that you can just bounce it, 1 has typically proven to be plenty. In the 3-drop spot, we got we got a consistency card in Maleficent. On play, you draw a card. I think the deck just has enough other good draw cards that's why we're seeing Maleficent being played less and less. And then Merlin Crab, played in the majority of lists because the +3, the bounce, the +3, the bounce. It's really, really strong. And Crab plus Fox equals your castle's gone in one swing. So that's a very strong play. Sisu, Daring Visitor. Again, this card, I actually like Sisu, Daring Visitor. I don't necessarily like her enough in this deck because you have other cards that can take care of things like Daisy Duck, the 1-drop, like a Hiram Flaversham. However, again, she takes care of those 2 cards, which are 2 very, very strong cards this format. So she's strong, and then it also opens up the shift line for Big Sisu later in the game. Madam Mim Elephant. I feel like in Amethyst decks, this is always going to be a tech card, never a core card, because people are conflicted. Do you play her at 2? Do you not play her at all? I really don't know if there's other ratio you should play Elephant at. I think it's kind of like a 0 or a 2 of, usually leaning into one of those cards that you probably cut for something else. Vanellope Von Schweetz. Quest for 2. Cost 4 to play. Uninkable. But it has rush and it gains evasive until your next turn, and a 3/3 stat line. So it's essentially a rush 3/3 stat line who then quests for 2, and the evasive is actually kind of nice because you can play her. You don't have to use the rush, gains the evasive, protected on your opponent's turn, and when it comes back to you, it has 3 willpower and quests for 2. It was played in just 1 list, but it's kind of a spicy little tech card. Then we have our Elsa, the new one, the 5-drop, the rush 2/5 stat line. And has the evasive. Again, I really like Elsa. I think this card is incredibly strong, and I definitely think you should be playing it. In the 6-drop spot, we got Lady Tremaine, who has kind of went into that tech spot, and Madame Medusa, which kind of surprised me seeing her not being played in every list. The vast majority, I want to say 21 out of 23, again, not quite remembering, it might have even been 22 lists, were playing Medusa. So again, more than likely you're going to be playing her as a 2 or 3 of. Typically 3 is the more common ratio. However, she was not played in every single top. And I even went and looked, I'm like, do we really want to count this list? I went and looked at the size of the event because, like, if it's a 20-person tournament, do we count the list if it's really just off the wall? But it's a 240-person tournament at Lyon in France. So like, I mean, as top 16 in a 200 plus person event, I feel like you have to count the top because that is tried, true, and proven. When we get into our higher cost spots, Elsa Spirit of Winter is actually seeing some play again. It's been a few formats since she saw play in here, and it's actually kind of nice. I think the 5-drop Elsa coming down with the 5 willpower usually means she's going to survive 2, and having the rush is very strong. And then when you can shift on 6 into Spirit of Winter Elsa, freeze 2 of your opponent's cards, and you have that bounce package to get both of them back to your hand. It is a very deadly combo that you can do, and I am a huge fan of this Elsa play in this format. Likewise, between Daring Visitor and your Emboldened Warrior, the Shift Sisu has actually been seeing a lot of play at 1. A few lists were playing 3, and obviously some at none, but a lot of lists, probably like 60% of them to 70%, were playing the Empowered Sister or Sibling or the 8-drop as a 1 of. I'm really shocked to see Brawl in this category, but 1 out of 23 lists were not playing Brawl. And again, that was that big one in France, I want to say. Not for sure. You'd think I'd pay better attention. But when you go through 23 lists, it gets hard to remember which information comes from each. I think Brawl should be mandatory. I think this is one of the best cards in Ruby, especially because it only costs 3 and it's inkable. And it hits the Hiram. It hits the Daisy Duck. It is so strong. I really, really like this card. Anyway. Be King Undisputed. The deck has so many uninkable cards, you kind of got to make concessions. Do you want your consistency cards? Do you want your power cards? Which power cards are you going to play? However, something like a Rabbit singing this just feels really good, and if you can control the tempo of the matchup this way and just dictate the pace, get those castles down and win that way, it feels really strong. I think Be King is very strong, and it is actually one of the last cards I cut before my final list. The Imperial Proclamation 1-drop item. I'm really not a fan of this card. It was played in one list. I think it was like a 60-person event too, so it's like, I mean, it was a bigger event. I don't see any scenario where I really want to play this card personally. Maui's Fishhook again. I think you got Crab for the +3. Obviously, this is an item, kind of sticks around. I like Crab for that aspect more. As far as the evasive gain, I don't like Hook enough to play it, but it did see some play. And then Library, I really like the Library. Played in the majority of the list, probably about 2/3 of them as like 1 or 2 of. Again, you're probably playing 3 or 4 castles, and then you play 1 or 2 libraries in tandem with it, and it's just really good. And it feels nice then when you be prepared, because if you move your characters to the library and then you drop a be prepared the next turn, you get to draw a card for every character that's banished from your own be prepared. It just allows you to gain a lot of resources very efficiently. And I mean, obviously there's other ways to just abuse it, but that's just one where you can use your own be prepared and still plus off of it. So if I had to build a deck for one of the DLCs this weekend, this is probably the deck I would bring. In that 1-drop spot, I'm going for consistency. I want the Broom, I want the Chernabog, I want the draw. I want to really just get to all my good cards late game. I want to not have to worry about my uninkable count. I believe we're at 13, I want to say, in this deck. Let's go ahead and just quickly go through 4 rabbits. So 4, 7, 8, 9, 13. Yes, we're at 13 uninkable cards, which I think 13 is a very sweet spot for this deck. It's so consistent. It's so strong. You're not going to run into issues unless you're super unlucky at 13. We've seen this deck have a ton of success with 16, 17 uninkable cards last format. So being at 13, I think, just really helps highlight the consistency of the deck. The Chernabog and the Broom and those 1-drop spots, just really focusing on consistency. We do kind of lack that 2-drop spot, though. I'm not going to lie. Like, when you only got the Snake, it can get a little, what do you do? Because do you come back with another 1-drop? Do you miss your 2-drop? It can be a little give and take. So I'm not going to say that the deck is perfect in that regard. However, then we come back on 3, you have something like Library or your Sisu, or if you know you have the Fox follow-up for it, you can play like a Crab on 3, boost your Fox, or not your Fox, your Snake or your Broom or your Chernabog, give it that extra 3 if you need to take out a threat. So like Chernabog or Broom can take out a Daisy when you drop the Crab. So I do really like Crab as a 2 of. Again, Fox is just pretty standard. Fox is insane in the deck. We also have 3 friends on the other side, and I am opting for 4 brawls. I was debating it, and I had Frenemy in here for quite a while too, and I don't think the deck needs to be that fast with Frenemy, and I think it just kind of dictates your playline too much, whereas without the Frenemy, I think the deck can be a lot more fluid and harder to deal with and just more consistent overall. Still playing the 4 Sisus without the Frenemy, however, because the name of the game is really turning into advantage, card advantage. That's where we have enough sets now, enough decks are getting consistent, and it's really, really becoming a popular thing, whereas like set 2, even into set 3, that's what separated the best decks from everything else, was the consistency. However, the colors are starting to get a little more consistent overall, and card advantage is something that is just becoming much easier for each color, and it's going to continue and continue and continue. So having the Sisu as the 4 of, who just gets to plus and gain off of your opponent's card advantage, is really nice, and she quests for 2. So I still do like Sisu in there as a 4 of. We got the Goat Rabbit Castle as our 4/4/4s. I'm still a huge fan of these 3. I like the Trinity. I like it a lot. We got the new Elsa. I put her in there as a 3. Like I said, I really am a big fan of this card. So in our 5-drop spot, we got 7 rush characters. Obviously, she only has the 2 strength. However, she can deal with evasive threats if needed, but that's usually not something that matters too much. The 5 willpower is just really strong overall. And then we also have our Maui. Maui's Maui. He is a house. Medusa. I like Medusa a lot. Like I said, a couple lists weren't playing her. However, I still think she's just too strong not to play personally. I will continue to play her until she gets power crept, and I don't think we're anywhere near that. The 5-drop Elsa. I was saying it earlier. I really, really like Elsa playlines in this format too. I think the format can really come down to who can control the late game better. And when you have turn 5 Elsa, turn 6 Shift Elsa, turn 7 Bounce, get them both back to your hand, and you just repeat that action. If you get into that 5, 6, 7 Bounce, you're in a really strong spot. You're going to start freezing your opponent. You're going to start just controlling the board. You're going to have your rush then to come back and take out those characters that you just froze. I think that is a very strong play, and I really, really like it in this format. Again, we kind of touched on Friends and Brawl and Library and Castle, which leaves Be Prepared. What more to say? Let's be prepared. We didn't need to cut it to 3 because we're only at 13 uninkable cards anyway. So we're going to go ahead and play 4. Be Prepared. Again, just overall looking at the deck, highlighting and just focusing on consistency and get to that Elsa playline. Get to your Medusa. Get to your Be Prepared. Using your locations to truly just rack your lore up. Using your Sisu to rack your lore up. You have Goat Bounce. You have Rabbit Bounce for advantage. You're not trying to win by turn 5 with this deck. You're trying to just win because the deck is insanely consistent and has so many strong tools late game. You could also opt for like a 1-1 split with Sisu and Elsa, or you could just play one of them as a one of. It's very common. But this is a list that I would be taking if I were to play this deck in one of the DLCs this weekend. Let me know down below, what do you like, what do you dislike, and what is your plan this weekend? Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.